So, fresh off the release of their game Soul Ash, Heart Machine have revealed a follow-up to their critically acclaimed Hyperlight Drifter titled Hyper Light Breaker. Swinny, you want to take the rest away?
Sick. Yeah, so we kind of mentioned this last week that Heart Machine teased for the 6th anniversary of Hyperlight Drifter, they were making a big announcement, and I said I hope it's a sequel. Kind of got my wish because this isn't really being positioned as a sequel. It's more like it's a follow up. It's set in the same universe, and obviously it's called Hyper Light Breaker, but this isn't Hyper Light Drifter 2 for many reasons. First of all, the original, which came out on a whole bunch of stuff like PC, PS4, Xbox One, and got a Switch port later, was like a top down, almost Zelda like action adventure game with really cool, mysterious world, amazing music by Disaster Piece. It was just a really, really cool,
Love the music.
very
So
acclaimed.
good.
This is nothing like that in terms of visual style. So this is actually a 3D title. It still has like visual elements of the Hyperlight world, but it's also not like a single player action adventure. Although by all accounts you could probably play it single player, it is being positioned as an online co-op game that is a roguelite as well, but it does have permanent upgrades. So this news is really interesting. I think they're very smart to not call this Hyperlight Drifter 2 because if they did that and then did this,
That's
like
true.
it
It's a different game.
to me this is actually an interesting way, whether or not I like the output to build the world. Like Solar Ash was a 3D game, so they've now got experience, and they've talked before about Solar Ash going from 2D to 3D was a real tough jump for them, and now they've done it. They've got the engine and experience. They can now work on this game, and it will just branch out, and it will further get the reach of their Hyperlight world. And Solar Ash, by all accounts, is also set in the same universe as well. I still got to play that game. But yeah, so I'm in two minds. Like, I'm not a big roguelite fan, but there's obviously some hugely popular games in the genre. Your Dead Cells, your Hades, and
Heaps
there's a
of
whole
games.
bunch
Heaps
of
of games.
games,
Yeah.
Binding of Isaac and all
It's almost
that.
ridiculous. It's almost like the
Yeah.
Metroidvania, right, thing. It's getting too crazy.
And yeah, but so it's really wait and see. This is a while away. They are
It's next year, right?
launching it early access next year. So but Hades did the early access thing really well. So it's not that I don't think that's a downer at all. Although I'm the kind of person that generally doesn't like to play games until they're like at the 1.0 full release myself. And this isn't being self-published. This is actually being published by Gearbox. So they're kind of stepping up in the world. Heart Machine. I think it's a great announcement. Hyperlight Drifter is one. It was very acclaimed, but it also is still, to me, it is still a bit of a cult game. Like it probably deserved even
A
more
lot of people haven't
recognition.
played it.
Yeah, a fantastic game. This looks cool, although I just don't know how cool it looks yet. So yeah.
Hyperlight Drifter is a very cool game that if it was published by like Microsoft or Sony and, kind of had that tag on it as a sort of indie, like similar to Journey and things like that,
Yeah.
it would have been massive, I think. Like
Yeah.
just how it executed. Like a little deep dive, because you were talking about the engines. This game and then the next game, the original game, we're going to talk about in a second, both were made on Game Maker Studio. And they both have now moved off that and moved into 3D games. And like, honestly, I'm going to say it in the next segment as well, but I'm not really like, I don't know. I feel like, the beauty of doing something in 2D and, something stripped back is that you can have a dozen people or like 5 people or 6 people and do it at such a high level that you look at it and you go, wow, this looks amazing. But then when you move into a territory like 3D, now you're competing with like the big boys. Now it's like I'm sorry, I'm comparing it to, the Horizon, Forbidden West, the Elden Rings and stuff like that, because that's just what you do naturally. No, but it's like a natural thing, right? And it to me just doesn't stack up so far. But we haven't seen too much, and I'm gonna say this about the next game as well. But
What? We'll see. I mean, I'm not a game developer, but I would also assume there are
Correct.
some advantages to 3D. Very correct. Pixel art it's not an easy thing to do, to actually do all the animations and everything for pixel art. I don't know if it's easy to do a full game in 3D, but there's certain things that are much easier to do, I think, in 3D than 2D.
oh yeah, for sure.
The only thing is, I remember playing Risk of Rain and then playing Risk of Rain 2, which also made the transition from memory from 2D to 3D, and I just liked something about the 2D. I just enjoyed more. I don't know what it is.
It's interesting because a lot of people hold that up as an example of a successful transition, even though
It was, but it
even
just
though a
didn't
lot of
click.
people initially didn't actually like the 3D move. I think that eventually got to the point where people were like, hey, this is actually an example of how a indie studio can successfully make that move. But it's interesting that your initial reaction was definitely
It
the
worked,
opposite
but
to
I
that.
wasn't a huge
Yeah,
fan
yeah,
of it. If that makes sense.
You must have a fit then.
So-
You're on fire in this episode. Yeah, no. So like a game that you're likely to jump on, Swinny, or you want to see more info?
I'd
I
play
want
with
to
you.
see more info because if it turns out it is really roguelite-y. It gets to take a lot to get me to play a game
Hades,
like that.
basically. Yeah.
And
The Hades is
I-
awesome, man.
I
Like,
need
have
to-
you gone
it
back to
is.
Hades, Swinny?
honestly, I need to play Solar Ash first.
Okay.
Because that'll probably give me a better indication of where they're at in terms of 3D games and stuff. So
What's your Hades update, by the way, Swinny? Did you bounce off that game?
no, I've barely played that game.
Damn. Okay.
I
I
will
love
hope-
that game, man.
I do hope to play it one day, but there's just too many games.
If there's one roguelite, it's that one.
Oh, it's so good. I give you credit on one thing, Swinny, like the Hyperlight Drifter, and then I was like, why didn't they just call it the Hyperlight Drifter 2? But I take your point. I think you're right.
Different game.
I much
probably.
prefer when games just say Hyperlight Drifter 2. Like it's simple to me, but
Well, if it's a proper sequel, but
but
if
it's
a
different.
completely
It's
different
almost
game,
like a
yeah.
spin-off. So yeah, it does make sense. All right, we'll talk about a game that is a sequel, and it is titled as a sequel. Thank you.